We not only go out and dig up things and look at things out in the real world, we also keep a watching brief on the scientific news to see what other people are finding out in the real world and reporting on it. And of course, one of the things that perpetuates the belief in evolution is that academics tend to stick to their own little field and they report on it and don't look at the big wide world. So we report on these things that get written up in the scientific literature, but we try to give people a big picture point of view and particularly show how a lot of what's presented as evidence for evolution actually fits much better into the biblical history of the world and makes far more sense. And rather than being evidence for evolution, it's evidence for creation or Noah's flood or something in biblical history. And sometimes we report on things that where the evidence is actually missing. Now, there's an awful lot of that in the geological column, so-called. So we report on that as well. Anyway, here are a couple of examples from our fact file. If you want to look up our fact file, it is a separate website, but there's a link to it from our main site, Creation Fact File. And these little reports we send out in our newsletter. And so if you want to read them straight away, but they do get archived and you don't need to know when the newsletter was sent out. And we have them going back quite a fair way. So here are a couple of examples. We've also got a question and answer site where we deal with some of these issues as well. So it's worth having a search of that. Here's a story that we wrote up in 2004. So that's still there. You can go back and have a look at that. And we have the original references that you can follow up, where a new geological time period was announced. Now that's interesting. For some reason or other, a large amount of geological time was being unnoticed until 2004. And this was announced to the world as the Ediacaran period. And it was from 635 to 538 million years ago. Now, that sounds all very interesting, but is Ediacaran a geological term? Is it to do with some sort of rock process? Well, you can actually go to where it's meant to have actually started. And here it is, complete with a little bronze plaque there announcing this is where the Ediacaran starts, and the 2004 there refers to the time that it was actually named. John, I know that you've certainly been to this area, and so have I. It's actually the name of a place. It's in the Flinders Ranges in South Australia. And this is a good reminder that all of those terms that you read about in the geological column that are familiar, such as Devonian or Jurassic, are names of places, and some of them are names of what the rock actually looks like. So Cretaceous means chalky. None of them have anything to do with time. They are all to do with where the rocks were first studied or some distinctive feature of them. So they are to do with what the rocks actually look like. They were studied in one place or they had a distinctive feature, and then rocks with similar features were found somewhere else in the world. And so they were given that name as being like the rocks in this original place. So Ediacaran rocks, nothing to do with being 500 million years old. It's just the name of a place in South Australia, and you can go and visit it. In fact, I recommend that you do. It's a very interesting place, this region, the Flinders Ranges in South Australia. We had a wonderful trip there. When was that, John? It was in 2012 or something like that.
Yes, somewhere back there, yep.
Yeah, yes. Anyway, you can read about the origins of this in our fact file. Now, coming forward a little bit more, this was just a couple of years ago in 2020. One thing you will often see in reports on the geological column is that there are missing periods. Now, this is a huge missing, fancy missing 1 billion years. Well, back in 2020, a few scientists thought, well, we may have found this missing billion years, although they weren't quite sure about it. There's a bit of a debate. Now, where's the missing billion years? It's called the Great Unconformity. Now, a billion years is a big number, so a good name for a missing billion years is something great. And this is an example of the Great Unconformity. A lot of you will recognize this place. This is the Grand Canyon. And if you just look at the main part of the photo here, you've got a region where you've got a lot of horizontal, very clearly defined rock layers or strata. And then you've got a region that is not quite so well defined. So somewhere between that less defined region there in the rocks and those very clear orange and brown horizontal strata there, somewhere there's a missing billion years. Well, there isn't actually anything missing there, isn't there? There's just a change in the strata. There's nothing to say that this is a period of time. It's just a change in the structure. Now, other things may have caused that. And anyway, if a billion years are missing, where did they go? Did they ever exist? After all, they're not there. Whenever I read about these missing millions of years, I think about that poem about as I was going up the stairs, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish that man would go away. It's about as fanciful as that. But this might be the biggest lot of missing million years, but they're all over the world. According to this was in the report that we wrote about, this scientist from UC Santa Barbara said there are unconformities, that's these missing bits, all through the rock record. Unconformities are just gaps in time within the rock record. Now, with Craig's photo and with the photo of the Grand Canyon there, did you see any gaps? I mean, there was no gap there. It was just a difference in the structure of the rock. Anyway, this one's called the Great Unconformity because it was thought to be particularly large. Well, yes, a billion years is particularly large. And it's maybe a global gap. And I think, John and Joseph, you would have seen this places where this large gap is meant to be. So we've got some interesting things to share with us about that and various other things coming up. So if you're interested in the specific references to any of these, you can go and look them up in our fact file where we've got them on record there, or search our Ask site. And if